Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. I am so excited to have Jaz Erenberg here with me today. I actually met her work before I met her. I was first introduced to her work back in 2019 when I saw a mural in Baltimore that said, "What is home?" And it was very much a time where I was contemplating that question myself. And I have a picture of it. And it really was meaningful and impactful to me. And over the years, as I continued to make Baltimore more and more my home, I saw more and more of her murals pop up around the city. And I had no idea the connection to her. And yet, all of the murals that really stood out to me the most, I later found out were yours. To tell you a little bit about who she is, I finally met her in person at an event called Creative Mornings in Baltimore. Jaz is an Afro-Latina community artist and muralist, and she runs her own small creative business specializing in community-centered murals. She co-founded Baltimore's newest mural festival called BRUSH Mural Fest. Her public artworks infuse vibrancy, color, and new life into the city and different neighborhoods. And I was just so impacted by her story and her passion. And I'm so excited to have you here and to have you share more of your story. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
The first question I love to ask people is when you hear that phrase, to follow your spark, what does that mean to you, if anything? What comes up for you when you hear that?
I think especially in the creative realm, we're taught to be very concerned about how we can have our talent make us money. And I think following your spark is following your dream, your heart, regardless of whether or not it's going to help fund your life.
Yeah. So it sounds like not being so attached to either money or external validation or doing it for these external reasons and really following that internal spark, that fire that really drives you, and let that fuel you in your life and in your work.
Yeah, it'll help you eventually find a way to fund your life.
Probably. And speaking of your journey, we'll definitely talk more about different things. And is there anything top of mind right now that you want to share about how you got to this moment, whether any tipping points over the years or sparks that were really powerful trajectories that landed you here?
Yeah, definitely. There's a quote that really sort of guides my practice, which is community over competition. I really wouldn't have the opportunity, been introduced to the mural world if it weren't for people taking me under their wing. And I really try and I'm sort of using that energy to keep building community in the mural industry with the mural festival and also just within my personal practice. So I think we could use more of that in the art world, community of competition.
I'm curious, you said other people kind of took you under their wing in your path to become a muralist. What drew you to doing murals in the first place?
I was given the opportunity and I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't a painter. I didn't study painting. I went to art school, so I had to study some painting, but it wasn't what I was interested in. But what drew me to it was I really had a drive to work in public, and I didn't really know what that could look like or what that meant. But I knew that I didn't want to create work for the white box, for the audience of a white box. Accessibility is really important in my work, and that's why I work in public mainly. So I think I definitely wasn't ready for the opportunity to paint a mural, but I'm the type of person to be like, okay, yes, we will figure it out. We'll get there eventually. We'll figure it out. So I was given the opportunity to do an artist residency that gave me my first look and feel into the mural world.
So it sounds, being connected to the essence of what matters to you around accessibility and wanting to work in public. And even though murals wasn't necessarily on your radar, when this opportunity came around, it sounds like you were able to see okay, I can see how this kind of fits into the things that are most important to me.
Right.
And I know before this, you told me about there will never be a right time to go for it. And right now you talked about not quite being ready. Can you tell us more about that, of what helped you just go for it, even though you didn't quite feel ready, or maybe you didn't have the training that someone else might have had?
I mean, yeah, I was straight out of college. So having any opportunity to professionally make art, I was like, yes, I'm 100% here for it. So, I mean, I also think I tend to make, and I think humans tend to make big jumps in times of transition. And so, being done with schooling and being without that structure, I think helped me jump into a different structure. And I think also, like, I started my business in 2020. And so, the upheaval of everyone's lives really, I sort of think helped fuel the urgency, I think, to make that change from teaching to going full time in art. So,
Okay. So it sounds like transitory moments where you're already stepping out of your comfort zone as well.
right.
I'm
I'm
already
already
here.
here.
Might as
Exactly.
well try something new, experiment, explore with something. And sounds like that's led to a lot of really beautiful opportunities in your life
Yeah.
and your business. Beautiful. So, one of the things I was so fascinated by when you were speaking at Creative Mornings was the community involvement piece. As a feng shui consultant, I definitely geek out on hearing you talk about how color and symbolism and imagery really impacts people and can transform energy and transform people's perception. So, can you talk a little bit more about what that community involvement piece has looked like and maybe has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, definitely. I was a former art teacher, classroom art teacher. So a lot of my community organizing came from being a teacher in Baltimore City, which is a lot more than just teaching in the classroom. So I think my loyalty to accessibility in the work, it really stems from that. And I started teaching my eighth graders, who's my oldest students, the impact of that public art could make. And so we started doing collaborative projects, I guess, in that way. And they wouldn't be permanently outside. And that was sort of where I honed my painting with volunteers and organizing, collaborative projects where multiple levels of people can be involved, and how to create a project that's like open enough and has that space for community input and right, like how do you navigate all of that? It's a lot. It's like mostly relationships, when it comes down to it, it's all relationships. So navigating all of that, dealing with approvals and stuff, it was all very small scale, but that's where I started to learn what sort of obstacles would be in the way of that kind of work. And then it's been evolving ever since. Right now, I'm in a series of community engagement sessions for a couple of different murals that I'm doing next year. And that is looking to a brainstorming session that's totally open to community members that can be really hard to like wrangle, right? So teaching really helped me learn how to scaffold these things so that there are lanes that we can, have open discussions in, but we're sort of avoiding a situation where there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And so I like to talk with community members, not about what's going to be in the mural initially, but how do you want people to feel after they see it? What kind of impact are you expecting it to have on the space? What are our goals for this mural, right? Before we talk about, colors and plants and content, right? Let's talk about what our goals are, why you're investing in a mural here, right? And build sort of how we're going to make sure that everyone feels seen and heard in this process. So right now that looks like a series of a couple different meetings where we have a brainstorming meeting, and then I come back with a preliminary design and I get more feedback, and then we present the final design. But this is sort of a stiffer version of what I like to do. I like to have it be more like a cookout and, have people be outside and, entice them with free food and get input in, a bunch of different ways. Again, the teacher in me is, let's do activities, let's do worksheets. So it looks different. Obviously, I tailor it to the community and what's feasible, at that given time. So yeah, I don't think there's a real answer of what it looks like, but
Sure.
it
Sounds like
can
it
look
well.
like.
It's different per person, per project.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
one thing I'm curious about, you talked about starting on this smaller scale inside the classroom. What was one of those first projects that you worked on or like you were able to get the students involved in?
So our school moved buildings, and so I also moved neighborhoods. We moved like sort of across the city. And I was tasked with, okay, how do we introduce ourselves to this neighborhood, right? They were renovating the school building. It was abandoned for a long time, and then it was being renovated for a long time. And now this, whole new community, this whole school community is, had sort of landed in this neighborhood that had this sort of hole in it for a while. And so how do we introduce ourselves to the neighborhood? How do we make sure that they understand that we're a place for their community as well, right? How do we integrate our communities? And so we decided to make so the school is called Lily Mae Carroll Jackson Middle School. It's at Clifton Park right now. That's a new building that we moved to. And so the first year that we moved there, we made like air dried clay lily medallions, and we sort of just hung them up on people's mailboxes and doors, and like as a gift to be like, this is who we are. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but it was really transformative.
Why do you think it made such a big impact?
Because it was on an individual level. It wasn't like an email blast, or it was really about like meeting people where they are. Right.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there's that personal aspect to it, that connection, that thoughtfulness. And to have the kids be able to participate in that sounds really incredible.
Yeah. To be able to show kids that age that something so small could be so impactful is nice.
Yeah. I'm curious about the kids' reactions too as they participated. Did you notice anything fun or interesting with them as they went through that?
So part of it with the kids is they don't necessarily see the bigger picture of what's happening. They're like, oh, I'm just going to paint this lily. But what we did is we took them with us as we handed them out. So they got to have interactions with people in the neighborhood. They got to see who works at the library, who lives on the corner, who owns this corner store, right? And so it was really just an excuse to facilitate that communication, that connection.
Yes. So it sounds like art, that project, that experience was, like you said, an excuse or a way to develop deeper relationships with the community and build connections that didn't exist before that. Beautiful. Do any of those kids or any of the kids that you ever taught help you now in any projects, or do you still connect with them at all?
No, I think like this past May, some of my older students graduated high school. And so they're off in college.
Doing their thing.
Yeah.
I love it. So yeah, I was really curious about that kind of initial experience. And knowing that your work sounds like it's evolved a lot over the years, is there any story that really stuck with you or experience of one mural that really had a profound impact on the neighborhood that you got to kind of see over the years or in a moment that you can share?
I don't know if it's a specific project. Well, I think, so the one that keeps coming to mind is my mural on Greenmount on the side of Herman's Discount. So it's like 32nd and Greenmount. And it's funny that comes to mind because that wasn't a community engaged mural. But the behavior of the neighborhood around it, I think, is like what is standing out for me. So that was one of the first murals that I did where I had to cover up a lot of graffiti, which comes with its own baggage. And it wasn't community engaged. And Ricky Herman from Herman's Discount was really adamant that it was still for the community. So I didn't have to do community engagement. And honestly, we didn't have time for it. But they were so very adamant. Look, the messaging was not to be about them or anything like that, like for the community. So what's painted there is a big black hand that's throwing golden marigold sort of into this night sky. And then on the bottom, it says, only love grows here. And I never worked, so it's in Waverly. I had never worked in Waverly before. And so the behavior around, work or me working in different neighborhoods, it always changed. It was a very warm welcome, like from the beginning, which was nice because I was like blocking the sidewalk for 2 weeks, So it's nice that they were so accepting. But while I was painting it, I just had so many conversations with people. And I think there was a situation where even my lift, my like aerial equipment got tagged, but my mural never did and still hasn't. And so and it's not just that, it's really felt connected to that quote. And it really showed like sort of how they felt about the neighborhood. And I think that was, I don't know, it's staying with me. And I don't know if I can articulate exactly why.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that's my other favorite mural of yours. And I see it often and I just love it so much. Like it just feels, it's like hard to kind of articulate, but it's just very powerful. It's very graphic. It's just, I can feel the love or the sentiment or the message that kind of comes through it. And maybe the neighborhood can too. And it sounds like, like you said, the mural still hasn't been tagged, like maybe other things were, but it sounds like there's potentially like a care or an investment that the community now might have for that wall or for that image, that message, and they're kind of taking care of it.
Yeah. There was definitely an older man, I can't remember his name now, who would pull up a chair and sit in that corner, not while I was painting, but afterward. And it really felt like he took on being the steward of that piece,
Nice.
know?
That's really special.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, I would imagine, what that community experiences. That's so cool. So one thing I'm curious about is, what do you think makes art so valuable in today's world?
I think it can be a very unencumbered, authentic expression of being a human. I think the art market, the world is definitely, we're in a place where that's very distorted. But I think on an individual level, it can still be powerful. Think about what you turned to during the pandemic, right? We were reading, we were consuming movies and things like that, like film. We were reading poetry, writing poetry, making art. And so that's what we naturally turn to.
So it sounds like there's this innate drive in human beings to make art, make beautiful things, make things that help us process the human experience. And that art is one tool and one avenue that can do that and help the artist as well as the people who interact with the art. That's beautiful. And I know at the beginning of this conversation, you talked about the importance of following your internal spark and not just what will make you money or be profitable. And I'm curious if you have any words of wisdom for people out there who might want to be artists or have this desire and feel that push pull and like, how do I stay true to myself and how do I like, actually monetize this? What might you tell them? What have you learned from your years?
I think one of the biggest things is get used to hearing no and go for the no. Apply for things that you are not qualified for. Putting your work in front of as many people as possible. Just because they said no doesn't mean that somebody who sits on that review board isn't, on another review board at a nonprofit that's opening a rec center that needs a mural. It's always about relationships and it's always about connections. Get your work in front of as many people as possible. And the way I did that was I had a rule my first couple of years being full-time. I had to have 10 applications out for anything at all times. The more no's you collect, more yeses will eventually come in.
Yeah. Sounds like the power of planting seeds and not being afraid to hear no's and just knowing it's part of the process. And it's just about how can I, like you said, get my work in front of as many people as possible and know that even if you hear a no initially, you don't know who else might have seen it, that a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now is going to remember you and come back around because they heard you or you shared something.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just no for now.
No for now. Do you have any interesting stories like that of like you shared something and let it go and then like a couple years later something came back around or something unexpected happened?
I don't know. I feel like it's not unexpected from me anymore because most of the work that I get now is from recommendations from, oh, I saw your work here. I sit on a board here. That's happened so many times.
Yeah.
And I really, honestly, planting all those seeds really makes a difference because I do still apply to things, but I don't have to be collecting no's like I felt like I did at the beginning.
Yeah. And one thing I'm curious about too, in order to be that kind of prolific and out there, especially at the beginning of a career, I would imagine, was there ever a challenge with like perfectionism or letting it go or just like doing more and releasing it out there and not feeling like every single thing had to be perfect? Like, what was your experience like at the beginning?
I feel like, so I know this is uncommon, but I do feel as an artist, I'm very not precious about my work. Like, I'll be the first one to throw it away. Like, my partner is very, no, we need to keep, and my mom has like trunks of stuff in her house. I'm the first one to be like, all right, just paint over it. And I think, again, being a classroom teacher, I think really helps with that. Like things are allowed to not be perfect. We live in an art classroom, in my art classroom, we did our best, we're doing our best. That looks different every day. And so I think I try and give myself that grace. And also I work by my personal practices is work for the good of the piece. There's a quote that like one of my woodshop professor, I think, said, well, you always work for the good of the piece. And that means that every piece is going to be different. It's going to be on a different surface in a different space with different people in a different community. And so working for the good of that piece is what matters. It doesn't have to always be in conversation with everything else that I've made. Nothing is perfect.
It reminds me of what you were talking about when you were saying in the process of community collaboration before talking about what is the mural going to look like and the colors and the this. You talk about the essence and how you want it to feel. And it sounds in your process, what I'm hearing is in the creation of it, the creation is what's important. The essence is what's important. It's not necessarily, there's no perfection anyways. So letting this be the best that it can be and the fullest self-expression in this moment, and that's enough.
Exactly.
And just release it out into the world and see what happens.
Yeah. And I think that's what is able to give that room for the community engagement, because I'm most often not painting in my neighborhood, right? And so some of that power is shared in this instance.
I know you talked about with each kind of project, it's different and it feels different. And there can be a lot of cooks in the kitchen sometimes. Have there been any like biggest challenges or kind of challenging feedback that came through in this unique style of work that you do?
I mean, yeah, you're working with people that you don't, well, I'm working with people I don't know typically. So there's always a curveball. There's always somebody who's very opinionated and could never be happy. There's all the different personalities in the room, even when, you hold a community meeting and there's 4 people. I prefer that because it's a lot nicer to be able to have a more in-depth conversation instead of just like listing what everybody wants to see in the mural with 30 people in the room. It's a lot more to navigate. But again, in those small situations, like people get real opinionated. And I just have to be able to take it. And even if in a brainstorming conversation, we come out and a couple of days later, I'll look at my notes and I'll be like, oh man, I don't know if I want to paint this. Eventually, right? It's my job to bring it to a place where it is something like this. And so I think that tends to be one of the most difficult pieces. But I think also the public art scene, at least in Baltimore, is changing and putting a lot more value on community input and community engagement than it has in the past, which I'm happy to see, even though it can be challenging. But what is it?
Is there anything that really helps you in moments like that where there's like tons of different opinions that kind of went a different direction and you're struggling to get reconnected to the piece in that moment?
I think ultimately it's going to be my voice no matter what. I can't help that. So I keep that in the back of my mind. I'm the one who gets to sit with the work and grow it, and figure out how it's going to have my voice in it and how it's going to touch all the points of that the community brought up and like be on theme. And so it's like, I'm the captain of that, right? So at the end of the day, no matter how many frustrating people I have to deal with, like I get to design it in my space on my own. Yes, there are parameters, but I mean, I find it really sort of difficult to work in the studio with no parameters and like, no, just here's a blank, canvas for you.
Yeah.
That's hard for me. So I appreciate the direction. I like the collaboration.
Yeah, interesting. And it sounds like being able to remember that no matter what, you're painting it, your essence is going to come through, your energy is going to come through, your style in some way, shape, or form is going to come through. And that, like you said, there's the kind of challenges and gifts of that community collaboration. And for you, it sounds like a really fun and interesting and engaging process to co-create that together. Beautiful. Well, I'm curious too, is there any other biggest life lessons that you feel like you've learned through the process of being a muralist?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of hate to repeat myself, but don't be precious about it. That's one of the main things. And I think people are like, oh, I paint murals, which is amazing, right? Not doubting that. But I think there are a lot of muralists who don't necessarily give thought to what it means to be working in public. I personally think there's a lot of responsibility built into that, built into who is the public. What does that mean? Why do we do this? Talking about ownership versus non-ownership, stewardship versus, right? Like all of those dynamics are in your work, whether you like it or not, right? If you're working in public. And so I think the gravity of that would be something that I would hope that up and coming muralists give thought to, right? I'm not saying you have to be a philosopher. What is the public? What is not? That's not what I'm saying, but just think about, give it some respect in that regard.
So when you say don't be too precious about it, do you mean don't be too attached to it or don't make it too your own? Or what does that mean to you?
So once your mural is done, it's not yours anymore. Like it is, like you own the copyright. Hopefully your contract says that, right? But it's not yours anymore. It could totally get tagged. My work's been tagged. It comes with the territory, right?
Yeah.
Writers are also making their own commentary on ownership and the state of existence. Like I'm not here to say anybody's voice isn't valid, but when you're working in public, you have to know that comes with the territory. When my work gets tagged, often my clients are like, "Oh, why aren't you so upset about this?" And I get it; it's an investment for the client. Like I get that, and I will come fix it. But it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Like I know the field I'm playing on, right? And so that's what I mean. Like, don't be too precious. Like you've given it to the city, you've given it to the community after.
Yeah. And it sounds like what you said too it comes with a territory of having it be that accessible and having it be that public and having it be that interactive. There's a difference between a painting in a museum behind a glass frame and having something actually be something that people are allowed to touch, are allowed to
Right.
interact with, can sit in front of and have a coffee, can make it a part of their lives. So it kind of takes on a life of its own. And like you said, the importance of really being able to release that because you can't control what's going to happen to it. The elements, the building,
Exactly.
it's temporal. And to be able to release that attachment sounds like it's been potentially really freeing or just allowed you to not take it personally if something happens to your work.
Yeah.
So speaking of other people getting involved in murals, can you tell us more about Mural Fest?
Yeah. So BRUSH Mural Fest is happening again for the second year. We're very excited. I run it with another amazing muralist. Her name is Saba Hamidi. We are producing 10 new murals at the convention center on September 14th from 11 to 4. You can come party with us. We will have food trucks and face painters and hula hoopers, and you can meet all of the artists, talk to them about their work. We'll have live music. Yeah, all the fun stuff. We'll be announcing our artists actually later today. So very excited about participating artists this year.
That's exciting. So when you say in the convention center, is it like indoors or are people doing murals outdoors?
Well, yeah, no. So there's a large retaining wall all along Pratt between the Pratt and Charles Street entrances of the convention center. And so we're painting 10 murals along that wall. So outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know there's people who are like, you got accepted to paint it and those are the artists. And is there a way for the public to participate in any way? Or are they just coming for the festivities or what's possible for public interaction?
So we have a whole week of events lined up before. So the week of September 9th, we have on Monday, I just finalized the event. So this might feel a little off. So maybe I will give dates. That week, we have 3 amazing workshops. One is the social gravity of joy. One is how to brand yourself in the new art world. And one is talking about how to get, your murals sort of from the design stage to up on the wall. We will be hosting an artist happy hour, which is totally free. That will be on Wednesday, September 11th.
Awesome. Beautiful.
At the Royal Blue. So that's free. You can just come drink with us. That'll be fun. And then Thursday, not Thursday the 12th, we'll be hosting a community paint day. So this is one of the days where anybody can come help paint a mural with us. So we'll be painting along with sort of in tandem with the Baltimore Arts District art walk.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is the best place to go for all that information the Instagram page for the festival or is that the website?
So you can check us out on BRUSH Mural Fest on Instagram. And then it's also just brushmuralfest.com. We will have most of our events posted up on the website. And then if you want to learn more about our artists and get to know them, you can follow us on Instagram.
Nice. Well, I can't wait. I'm so excited. I definitely want to paint more murals in my house. So I'm excited to learn and just see your guys' process and how it works. And I definitely feel the impact of just being able to be creative in that way. And it's so cool to see that on a large scale in the city. So I'm just so grateful for the work that you do and how it's transforming Baltimore. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
As we wrap up here, one of the questions I love to ask is for me, following that spark really means, like you said at the beginning, you just give yourself permission to follow whatever is sparking your curiosity, your creativity, or whatever it is. Is there anything, whether random, fun, interesting in life right now that you've kind of been following a spark? It could have nothing to do with painting or murals, but anything that's been sparking your curiosity lately that you've been following.
So I think it would probably be my husband builds boats. And so he built his first boat a couple of years, oh no, last year. And we've really gotten into going out on the water. I grew up sailing and stuff, so it's not foreign to me, but I am very excited to be reconnecting with that and sort of doing it sort of on our own terms, which is very
Mm-hmm.
nice. And so I think this summer, I think the sparks that am following is really trying to stay connected to nature. I feel like it's not, super profound, but summer is my busy season. So finding
Mm-hmm.
time for that is a struggle. And so I've been putting a lot of effort into that and I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor.
Nice, beautiful. That's actually kind of ties into another question that was on my mind that knowing that you make murals as your business for a living, that form of creativity, that was there anything else that fuels you or nourishes you or fills up your creative well or just energy? And it sounds like nature is potentially one source of that.
Yeah, yeah. And definitely community. I think the community of muralists that I've built around myself we're really good at filling each other's cup.
Well, is there anything else that you would most want people to remember? If they took one thing away from this conversation, what would you want them to know or remember?
There's never going to be the perfect time for it. Just go for it.
Mm, nice. I love it. Just go for it. Beautiful things happen when you stay consistent, when you keep putting it out there. And I'm so grateful that you just went for it. So thank you for sharing more of your story today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.